thought there should be a book club for movies? We're your new favorite pod. Never doom scroll a streaming service again and end up not finding a single thing to watch.
Every month, we'll pick a genre or topic and choose movies that are streaming across platforms to watch and talk about. Also, all movies can be drinking games, right? Join the conversation in the next meeting of the Monthly Movie Club podcast. Welcome to the latest meeting. I'm your host, Mario, here with my lovely wife, Jen.
Hello.
This month's topic has been timey-wimey movies. Time travel, just all sorts of time hijinks. And this week's movie has been Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes, directed by Junta Yamaguchi. I'm going to say Junta. I'm not sure if it's Junta or Yunta.
How did you find this movie, or how did you know about this?
I saw this movie. It came out in 2020, but I read about it back when we were thinking about time travel as a topic and we were like looking for movies and stuff. It came up in one of my searches as being this really interesting indie Japanese time travel movie. And the really cool thing about it, which we'll get to in a bit, is the way it's shot. It's pretty unique. So I added it to my list. Completely forgot about it till we started doing this again.
It was it 40 minutes or?
It's an hour and 10 minutes.
It was an hour and 10 minutes. And when you first told me about it, I thought it was going to be a quick, like a 20-minute short, almost like a project.
Oh, that's what I totally thought. I thought it was a short film. One, based on what I knew of how it was shot, and then two, because it was like an indie film, I was like, oh, this is like a short movie. It's probably going to be like anywhere from like 25 to maybe 40 minutes long. But yeah, no, it was a good 70 minutes. I think it uses all the time that it has really well.
Mm-hmm.
I think the really cool thing about this is that it basically plays out in real time.
Mm-hmm.
So the 70 minutes that we watch pass by in 70 minutes in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no jumping around in time, no different scenes, things like that. So I think that's what's really cool about this movie.
I like that part because it's very rare to see that. You know, my favorite episode of Friends, or one of my favorite episodes of Friends, is the one where
where they're all getting ready.
Yeah, no one's ready, and it's shot all in one room, all basically in sequential, or how would you say it, in real time?
And yeah.
And I like that episode a lot. So I like the concept of this one. I think it's really smart.
Yeah, I think a lot of TV shows where they end up doing the whole, like, everything takes place in one scene, I think it's referred to as like a canned episode, because they're all
by itself. It's contained.
It's contained. They don't go anywhere. Everything happens in one place. A lot of times those tend to be clip episodes. Like, they're stuck.
True.
They're stuck somewhere. So they're just reliving things that have happened in previous shows. But the good ones, like the Friends episode, play with that real time very well and keep things moving. I think the great thing about that one episode was basically you saw it as a play.
Mm-hmm.
Like characters came in and out, conversations kept going, and they didn't rely on cutaways and things like that. On the other hand, I still think are very successful. There's been a couple of canned episodes in Community that we're just rewatching, or I'm rewatching, you're watching for the first time. But then when they do their cutaways, they're completely brand new cutaways that have never happened in any episode before. Yeah. Like they're just making it up.
Yeah.
So at least there's like a lot more effort put into like, let's just make up a bunch of random stories. Okay, so again, movie is called Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes. It's a Japanese movie.
Subtitled,
right? Yes. Yeah. So get your reading glasses. And a quick synopsis of it is: a cafe owner discovers that the TV in his cafe suddenly shows images from the future, but only 2 minutes into the future. Super simple premise, but I think executed really well.
Yes. Part of me is wondering I mean, for the movie, it needed to be 2 minutes, but if this were to actually happen to someone,
Oh, it
what
totally
can
happened.
you do in 2 minutes? Like, you wouldn't be able to do anything in 2 minutes. What's the
Yeah.
point?
It's a weird anomaly. That's the fact that it's like a weird temporal displacement. It's a weird time loop anomaly that is occurring and you can see it, um, is the interesting part. It's a very, again, like we were just saying, because it's kind of played out in real time. It's one of those things where I was just saying like it plays itself like you were watching a play.
Mhm,
Characters are kind of constantly moving, they're constantly talking to each other, they're changing their staging, where they're standing, how close to the camera they are, how far away. Um, so there's always something to go about it. But I think one of the main things about this that caught my eye and the reason that I wrote it down was the fact that it's shot in a kind of one take style. Like, we know it wasn't shot completely in one take, but it's one of those things where like there are no cuts
mhm,
or visible cuts
mhm,
in the movie. The camera moves in, and the camera is a character. It's a person or it's a viewer that moves along with the character. So that's the really unique part of this. And that's why it takes place in real time, right?
mhm,
So it's just it's the passive observer, but you're moving along with the characters. When they move scenes, you move with them, right?
mhm.
So that's the fun part.
Right, we go from, the cafe owner, his name is Kato. We go from his apartment upstairs down into the cafe, back up to the apartment, down to the cafe. It's shot in those 2 main
Yeah, it's basically
scenes.
one small building, but like you're climbing
Right.
up and down the stairs constantly.
And we did see that they shot this with an iPhone.
Yeah, in the credits, and and I think I even said like these aren't the Jackie Chan credits because like in the kind of little square as the credits are rolling, they show behind the scenes stuff, and you can see them, with handheld, like an iPhone, like on a little high handheld tripod, and then them kind of moving back and forth and stuff like that. Or when there's an action scene, they're
Following the
following the
characters.
characters, and then the cameraman's actually jumping over like furniture and things like
Mhm,
that.
mhm. Over characters' shoulders, going from room to room.
Yeah. But everything is, I think the beauty of that little behind the scenes thing too is also to show you how intricately planned this whole thing is, because it's not as simple as just standing there while the actors read their
Right.
lines. It's very much a this entire thing and is a choreographed elaborate
Mhm,
dance.
mhm.
Everybody has their pieces, their parts that they need to move, that they need to hit, and it's way more complicated than you think it is.
Right.
And the fact that there is no CG,
Mhm.
um, or okay, I'm not going to say no CG because there might be. There was a gunshot, but there is no CG when it comes to the time travel portion of it.
Mhm.
So when they're talking to themselves, there's no CG involved. It's all practical. They planned everything out. They filmed those things and they
Meticulously.
meticulously
Yeah.
and they played them back
Yeah.
so that things would line up correctly. So Kato being the main character, like you mentioned, he's the cafe owner. We have Aya or Aya. Aya?
It's Aya
It's Aya.
or Aya.
She's his employee. And she works in the cafe also. We have Komiya, who is his friend and bandmate. They're in a band, so his owning the cafe is not really his like ultimate dream. His ultimate dream is to do music or something, but it's something that they're just starting off on. Tanabe, who all I can remember, like all I was able to write down when I was writing down the notes was beanie guy. He's the guy with the beanie. And Ozawa, who's I wrote the pill bug guy, but he's the scientist of the group. He's the guy who basically understands to a certain extent the mechanics of what's happening.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mentioned that one of the interesting things that I wrote down about this, and one of the reasons I wanted to watch it was the filming style. Right, completely makes it look like it was completely done in one take. It's real time, and you see you see the characters working things out as they're figuring things out, which is really fun to be able to see. Kind of the thought process. Because it's something that happens in real time. I think it kind of puts you in that same situation of like,
Mhm.
okay, this just happened. How are you processing that? You know.
Yeah, you're going through it together.
And then overall, I just love the fact that Kato just goes with it.
Is he too nonchalant about it?
He kind of is. I can't tell if he's like completely given up on life and was like, all right, or if he's just kind of surprised by it, that he's just like, let's see where this is. So the
But
whole
but even if it was, let's see where this is going, he was not surprised by it. He's just like, yeah, all right.
so like the whole thing kicks off with him in his room. He's looking for his guitar pick, and then
His
his
2-minute future self says, "Hey, it's under the rug."
yeah, and the way he convinces himself that it's him in the future is that he essentially has a conversation because he knows what he's about to say. So he responds and he says yes, and then he tells him to look under the rug, and then that convinces present time Kato to be like, yeah, okay. And then his future self tells him, okay, your 2 minutes are almost up. Go downstairs. Say this. It'll sure. Let me roll with it. Then goes downstairs, and then the whole thing kind of kicks off from there.
This is we talked about the different kinds of time travel in our last episode, and one of those types was that this always happened. So this is that.
Yes,
This is the case where he's talking to himself. It's been 2 minutes, so now the future of him tells him, "Okay, now you need to go and do this." Otherwise, future self would never have told present self. So it is the always had happened type of.
yeah, which in the full examples that were like that I was giving and were part of that new rock stars breakdown. I think that was the Terminator example where
Yes.
where John Connor sends back that soldier to protect his mom, and then that soldier is actually his daddy, and makes John Connor, and then John Connor survives into the apocalypse to send him back. Like it must happen that way.
Correct.
And yeah, this one, it later on in the movie, they kind of start to discuss once they're like getting past the giddiness and excitement of like all of this, they start talking about or between themselves. Like
Mhm.
I think it's Cato really that kind of brings up the idea of like, do we not have self autonomy anymore? Basically,
Right.
is this all predetermined now?
Mhm.
Because we are seeing versions of ourselves in the future telling us to go do something. Can we not do it?
You're
Or
basically a prisoner now
or do
to
you
it.
have to do it? And then he basically says we're now like prisoners, we're now slaves
Yeah.
to this thing because they told themselves something, but now they have to remember in 2 minutes or however long, whenever the time period passes by, they need to go back to the screen to be able to tell themselves rewind. And then that whole thing of basically them having the two screens. So they're in the present. There's a screen in the cafe that shows them 2 minutes in the past,
Mhm.
and there's a screen in his room that shows them 2 minutes in the future.
Mhm.
And then when their buddy Ozawa shows up, of course, he's the guy who's like, "Yeah, it's only 2 minutes. He can't really do much, as you mentioned.
Mhm.
So what do we do? Face them next to each other, create an infinity mirror, and we'll be doubling time or adding 2 minutes every single time."
Mhm.
Would you be adding 2 minutes or would you be doubling it? No, you'd be adding two
Adding
minutes.
2 minutes.
So yeah, and I think that's the part that I another part that I kind of found funny is that like at the very beginning he calls it the time TV, or they keep calling it the time TV, And then when Ozawa thinks about like putting them together so they create like the infinite mirror type thing, uh, he refers to it as the Drost TV. And I had to look up what Drost meant
Yeah, what
because
is that?
Drost is that effect. It's the infinity mirror effect.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's when an image repeats itself within the image. So the way he explained the woman holding
Oh, the
hold
can of coffee or whatever it
yeah, the
was.
can of coffee where she's holding a can of coffee of that can of coffee. So she's holding a version of herself, holding a version of herself,
Mhm,
like, and it just keeps going infinitely,
mhm,
theoretically, right?
mhm,
Like that's what they're doing. And that's what how like one of those infinity mirrors works. It's like a three-way mirror, and they're bouncing off of each other, so they keep just creating a reflection. So yeah, with both screens pointing at each other, they create that infinite
mhm,
multi-layer thing where now he's like, yeah, if you speak to the third TV in the thing, you're now speaking 12 minutes into the future or the past, right? I think after he does that, there's almost immediately there's like he pops into it telling himself something about that's when he tells himself about the pill bug.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, I I collect these things. I gotta go to the thing. The part that got me though is that he didn't tell himself to go now. He just told him, "Hey, you're gonna find a pill." Oh, well, okay, I guess it's
It's the
only
same
12
thing as the
minutes.
VCR though, because it's like, oh, like, what gave him the idea to go do it now? Like, you know what I
But
mean?
I guess it makes sense where if his future self from 12 minutes from now is telling him you're gonna get a pill bug, doesn't mean that he's gonna wait till tomorrow to do it, right? It means it needed to happen
Right
within those
now.
12 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why he left. Okay.
Mm.
My own question.
I love the I loved the brilliance in the filming, the idea of extending the 2 minutes in this Drost, is it Drost?
Yes.
Drost TV. One of the things that kind of bothered me, though, was their acting, because I know it's scripted, but they were pausing like it was improv, almost, like, it gave off that improv feeling to me. A lot of them were hunched over, like, "What do we do now?" type of acting. I don't know, it was very strange to me. I didn't really like that part. It was very distracting at first.
I wonder how much of that is actually. I mean, we don't know any of these actors, right? They're all Japanese
Mhm.
actors, so we don't know if they're new actors or if they're seasoned or whatever. I wonder how much of that though is just truly how actors
Stand?
portray comedy. Like it is this is kind of like it's kind of like a comedic sci-fi movie, right?
Yeah.
And then you see like Beanie Guy, Tanabe. He's very much like all of them are all of his friends except for the cafe. The cafe owner is very kind of like deadpan, but like his employee Aya, she's very cutesy.
Mhm,
His two friends, right, Mia and Tanabe, are very animated. They're
mhm.
very expressive, and yes, they have the like hunched over like, but they're like they're moving their arms a lot and they're like making super big gestures. So I wonder if it's just more of a like we're just not used to seeing actors like that.
Maybe. I just felt like they were waiting for each other's lines
That could totally be it too.
the whole time. That's why it felt to me like it was an improv thing. Like they were still processing it. I don't know. It bothered me at first. It went away, I think, a little bit later when there was a little bit more action maybe, but yeah, something I just didn't like too much.
Yeah. Do you think one of the ridiculous like I think a lot of what this movie gets right is spot on. Like just the idea, the timing, how the logic of the time travel through the TV happens and how they have to remember to go back and do it right to be able to tell their past self, all of that stuff. But the extension cords were just ridiculous. Like like he brings from his upstairs apartment from his cafe. he has an iMac plugged in. And then when his friends like, can we bring it down? He's like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then they bring it down and oh yeah, he just happens to have one on an extension cord. Like, and it's gonna go all the way down to the cap. So is he stealing electricity from his own place? Like he just has an extension cord up to his apartment?
Well, can that stay on without a cord?
No.
I would've
It's a
yeah, I
desktop
don't know.
PC. It's a desktop Mac. And then the same thing with the
The same thing when they go up 5 floors.
yeah, did he take the Mac again?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, and then he goes up to like the yeah, something like 5 floors.
It took forever for the 2 guys to tie up the girl. They went up 5 floors. It had to be 5 floors away. Um, they were still arguing about how to tie her up by the time they get up there.
Well, it does lend to the comedic aspect of it, of this guy being this like thug, this gangster, but then both of them being completely clueless when it actually comes to like enforcing it.
Yeah.
Like they're just the tough guys. He can be a tough guy when he pulls out a knife, but like after that, they're just kind of idiots. But yeah, I think it pops open a pretty interesting question of like when this if this is going to happen, do you have free will, right? And like everything that's going to happen, you should be able to see. And the fact that he brings up the screen, he's like his friends are like, we're going to be able to see and be able to help you.
He loves that. I loved that his friends were able to help him on his way up, just walking up the stairs. His friends actually came up to help him.
Yeah, they like every set of stairs, like they would come back up and give him something new. And then Tanabe is just like, dude, you're so awesome.
So now the 2 minutes has grown. It could be exponential at this point, right?
Yeah, because of
Because
the Dross TV.
they're jumping screens, right?
Yeah.
So they're jumping minutes. And it's causing this whole timey-wimey thing. So we've got time and space cops, like legit time and space cops that are hiding their blasters, what look like blasters, in their coat pocket.
Funny enough, the two movies that we do have time cops to this. Frequently Asked Questions has Anna Faris as a time cop, essentially.
That's true.
And then now we have these two guys. But yeah, these guys are like legit. They have little phasers and they have trench
You're
coats.
so smart to call them phasers. I was like, these are blasters. And they're hiding them not in holsters, but in just their coat pockets.
Yeah. I would call them Columbos.
Oh, how cute.
They had like the Columbo
Time and space Columbos. But they come in and they want to erase memory. Now, you know what I'm thinking?
they want to reset the
They
time.
want to reset the time, but they're also wiping memory of this event.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking MIB,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They pull something out, they kind of
Little
flash you a little bit, make you lose
the
memory for the
neuralizer.
last few minutes or whatever it is. No, it's matcha tea. It makes you forget all your troubles.
Pulls out his little whisk and like
Why? That's what I thought they were doing. I literally thought they were in like a tea house, basically. So he was just gonna make them a cup of tea, and they'll just forget. But no, he's
sleepy
pouring
time
out,
tea.
yes, nighttime tea. Why? Why is it in matcha form?
I
This couldn't be a pill that they just made these people swallow.
yeah, I don't know. Well, he did say that. So they explain how like when these things used to happen, they used to basically have to like wipe people's entire mind,
Yeah.
but that they've improved it to the point where they can wipe people like just for a few hours.
Right.
And so I think he was kind of weighing it, kind of.
I think if they improved it that much, they could have put it in a little tablet.
It could have been like a parking validation, like every tablet's 15 minutes.
Yes. Yes. See, I think we would be pretty good time and space cops, I think. I could put my blaster into my robe here.
And I think this is the part that got really interesting, right? Because the whole time they've been talking about this whole predestination, predetermined, like, can we change something? Our first glimpse of this actually back at the beginning of the movie where he asks himself, or like they keep egging him on to be like, ask yourself, um, to go ask the
Oh,
girl out,
yeah.
the barbershop girl, ask her out. on a date. And then he runs in from the future saying, like, yeah, she said yes. And then he goes down and then he gets rejected, right? All the hopes in the world. And he's like, I just lied to myself.
Yeah, now he's the one. He's the
But
one that has to lie to himself.
his employee, she's the one that freaked out about what would happen. She was the first one that kind of just freaked out of what would happen if we don't continue what we did,
Mhm,
what our future selves told us, what would happen if we didn't tell us to do that.
mhm.
So go in there and lie. And then that's why he runs in there and goes, yeah. So as the time cops are getting them ready, right? They see a video, right? The video of them in the future for 2 minutes taking the
Matcha.
the matcha and then passing out. And then when it's their turn to do it, the present them, and they're doing it in front of the camera, she sneezes, which can't 100% tell if it was like totally intentional for her to sneeze, or if she was like about
Planning it?
to, yeah, yeah, if she was planning on sneezing or dropping it or being, oops, but she does that. And then the guys start freaking out. And then we get a little Back to the Future one where they start like disappearing.
Fading.
And they're like, you created a paradox. No. And then the guy's like, there's no time. There's no time because the paradox has been created that the fact that in those 2 minutes when they were supposed to drink it in front of the camera, they're not going to be able to. So
They caused the change.
they cause their own demise, their own change. I wonder if in this reality, if they died, cease to exist, or they just go back to their own timeline because they never got sent to this anomaly.
I don't think it would have changed that they didn't get sent because the timey-wiminess is still there.
Because they're going to the past. It's not like in Back to the Future where he goes to the past and and his parents are directly involved with his future. These two guys are just like, now we work for the agency. So
Right.
for them, they would have just continued in whatever timeline they were in the
Yeah, I
future.
think so.
Okay. So rating. I think we set up 1 through 5 DeLoreans in our last one. What would you give this movie? And
I'd give it a 5 DeLorean. I think it was just the right timey-wiminess to get me confused, but also interested. Again, I thought this was brilliant. I loved that they, even though it was such a short time period, it was just 2 minutes. I love that they played with that and they were able to make that into that Drost TV. They put their brains together and figured out how to extend this. But then they also got into some trouble. Overall, I thought it was a great movie. Even though the acting kind of threw me off a little bit, I did really enjoy it and just enough timey-wimey to get me confused, but still, I'm happy.
nice. Yeah, I think I agree. I would give it 5 DeLoreans. I was worried that the idea of a single shot movie would get very monotonous. The most boring YouTube videos are the ones that like are single camera. But then the thing on those is that the camera doesn't move. Whereas here, the camera is another character and it moves along with the action, it moves along with the characters. So there are scene changes. There's just no cuts. And I think all of that was really interesting and done really well. And I think the logic about all the time travel has been thought out meticulously well, except for the extension cords. But it's not enough for me to dock it. So yeah, I think it was done really well. And now we go on to cool trivia from IMDb. This being a foreign film, there and only 3 years ago, doesn't have a ton of kind of behind the scenes stuff. There was an article from Collider that interviewed the director, and in it they say Yamaguchi uses a camera no bigger than a Tamagotchi, and he told the Guardian, "You can get close to the cast like 5 centimeters away, and take really really good pictures." The camera was strapped to the back of a smartphone, which we see in a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. You see him with the little handheld tripod, thing with his iPhone hooked up onto it, but I guess it wasn't always his iPhone recording because, like, you do have to get into really tight space. The camera was strapped to the back of a smartphone, which he used as a which he used as a handheld monitor so that he can watch the footage back as he followed the actors. So I thought that was just like really cool, really fun way of shooting this. Yeah. And then our tried and true drinking game.
Tried and true.
Yes. Cemented in this is definitely a sober.
Sober.
I mean, if you wanna have a gummy or two before watching this thing, it's gonna make it.
It's gonna make that timey-wimey really difficult to follow.
Yeah. But no one ever said the name of the movie. There was no one there was no Willem scream, and no one threw a gun. So you're good.
No drinkies.
No drinkies.
We have some honorable mentions, since this is our last episode for timey-wimey. On Netflix, hopefully still streaming by the time you guys hear this, is Time Trap, Arc, In the Shadow of the Moon, The Endless, About Time, and See You Yesterday. On Hulu, there's a good one called Palm Springs. That one's a more modern one. I think any of you would love to watch. A favorite of ours is also Groundhog Day. I
Yeah.
don't know if it's streaming now. It's something that we've purchased because we just love watching it every year. Because who doesn't love Phil Collins? Phil Collins? Phil Collins?
Phil
Phil
Connors.
Connors. And Ned Ryerson.
Yes. Needle Nose Ned. So with all of that, thank you for joining us in our latest movie club meeting. And we'll see you next time. Happy
Happy
streaming, everyone.
streaming.